Welcome everybody back to the new episode of the Zero Gravity Podcast, and today we have a really special guest. I had the opportunity to meet him down at the Polaris Dawn dinner, and it was great. A lot of engagement, a lot of great conversations, and with that, let's introduce Felix Gatfield with Spacetime. So, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. And like you said, it was wonderful getting to meet you and everyone else at the Polaris Dawn dinner in Florida.
That was your first time in the United States, right?
Yes, first time I'd flown overseas to America. Yeah.
How was that? Was it what you expected it to be? Was it better? Was it worse? Like, what was it? What was that experience like?
It was really good. It was a lot better than I thought it would be.
Okay.
It's different. It's very different to sort of England and other European countries. Sort of in a lot of ways. Some are quite noticeable and some not.
Interesting. So, for the viewers that don't know, you're based in England, correct? And this was your first time at here in the States, and you came to see the Polaris Dawn launch.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more as to how that happened? And because I know the story behind it, but I think everybody else, learning about it would be pretty excited.
Yeah. So it's first sort of started. I think it was a couple months after they'd announced Polaris Dawn and the Polaris program that there were going to be these missions, and they'd sort of set a date, sort of. I think it was. I can't remember the exact date, but it was quite a few months ahead. And obviously I'd followed along with Inspiration 4, before Polaris, who Jared also was with, and I sort of, I'd followed along, I'd interviewed them, and I thought, why not try and be able to go over and see them launch.
Yeah.
It's been following along with them for quite a while. So I sort of came up with the idea of sort of doing a fundraiser because I wouldn't be able to sort of fund sort of a trip like that on my own. And so it was one morning that we came up with it. Um, and by the evening time, I'd recorded a video, sort of set up a fundraiser, budgeted everything that sort of that we'd have to spend money on. And I posted that, and also posted a link on Twitter. And I think it was within about 3 minutes, Jared replied and said that I can't remember the exact thing he said, but he said that he'd get me and someone from my family over to see the launch.
That's awesome. And Jared's a great guy. I mean, he's constantly like responding to people on X, and one of the things that I've come to like a lot is just the transparency. I mean, he goes out of his way to reach back out. It's not just somebody on my team is going to get back to you. He personally will reach out to you. So that's pretty cool. I'm glad that you got a
Yeah,
chance to come to the States. I think it's one of those things where it's one thing to see a rocket launch on video or to read about it or see pictures, but when you're there to see it in person, it's different. It's a lot different.
yeah.
But tell us a little bit more about yourself. Tell us about what you do. I know you have some great content. You got some great interviews up on the web. But yeah, share with us a little bit more about what you do in space.
Thank you. Yeah. So my name's Felix. I'm 16 years old, and I'm the host of an educational YouTube channel where I interview valued members of sort of the space community, the space industry. That sort of varies from astronauts to people who are just fans, sort of following along with everything that happens. And then I post that on my YouTube channel, Felix's Space Time. And sort of apart from interviews, I've been looking at sort of doing informational videos, sort of ones that can sort of choose a specific topic and cover it for other people to learn all about.
Yeah, and you have some great videos too. I was looking at the tour you did with Blue Origin. That was pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Yeah, that was
Um,
really good.
how was that? What was that experience like?
Yeah, it was interesting. Sort of being able to go into an actual rocket factory, but behind the door there actually, there's a rocket there sitting there sort of being built. The original plan was we'd sort of been organizing that for a few months. I've been talking to someone from Club for the Future from Blue
Okay.
Origin, their
Yep.
non-profit organization. And so I interviewed the head of that organization. They said, when you're over, let us know and we'll give you a tour. So it was meant to be a tour of their actual factory floor, but sort of it
Wow.
went from so I'm not a US citizen, so
Yeah.
we got just the tour of the lobby, which is just as amazing. They've got the new Shepard booster and capsule in there, which was amazing.
Yeah, no, it was a great thing to see, because I think a lot of times what happens is people forget that, yeah, that there is some really cool stuff being worked on physically. You look at the launch, you look at the rocket, but seeing it in the process is different. I had the opportunity to go to Via Space and tour their facility, and that was amazing. I came back home with a bunch more motivation than what I had left with, just to go out there and continue to do things like this or educate more people. So I can't even
Yeah,
imagine what you felt sitting there with that booster right there in front of you.
yeah, it was amazing. And people sort of don't realize as well, like you said, you know, building a rocket goes from, making the nuts and bolts to putting together sort of stages on the launch pad. There's a lot that goes into it that sort of isn't really seen, and that's quite a shame. I'd like to be able to share that, the important and hard work that goes on behind the scenes to make things like this happen.
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think it's great. I think it's definitely going to motivate a lot more people to go out there and pursue those things, and maybe get some interest in joining that field later on.
Yeah.
So one thing I do want to ask you is, you're 16. What got you into the space industry, the space field, and when did that start?
Yeah, so it was about when I think I was about 12, or maybe sort of 11, nearly 12. And I was on YouTube one day and I came across a video from SpaceX. It's still up there. It's called it's like Starman, I think it's called.
Okay,
And it's
yeah,
basically the first Falcon Heavy launch sort of video, sort of like a little edit of it, I guess,
yeah.
from SpaceX. And they posted that, and it was quite a few years ago. I think the launch was in 2018, but I found it, and it was during lockdown, so we were sort of all inside, sort of on the internet, and I came across that and saw it. Just so amazing that that thing is happening, and I'd never heard of it before. So I sort of dug into it, sort of wanted to know more.
Yeah, no, awesome. Yeah, I think I've seen that video, and it was surreal, seeing it. And is this the one where they had Life on Mars playing in the background?
Yes, yeah, I
Yeah,
think yeah,
it's a phenomenal video. We'll put the link somewhere. I think everyone should watch that at least once.
oh
Just
yeah.
seeing the crowd and everybody getting around that rocket and seeing it go off and cheers and everything, it's great. So you saw that video. Um, what led you to decide to go into the industry and start doing content, right? Like doing interviews, going to these events. What fueled that passion?
Um, I'm not sure really, sort of how it all sort of began into interviews, but I got an account set up not long after I saw that video on YouTube on Twitter, and sort of there's a massive space community on there that you can sort of join in with. So many people, like you said, like people like Jared, who are actually sort of in that industry, sort of talking about it, and you can ask them questions. And
Yeah.
I thought, why don't they come on for a video interview, sort of talk all about it as well? And my channel actually started not with interviews, but with sort of, I think they're still up there. You can see them, but they're sort of PowerPoint presentation sort of videos. No, I wasn't in them, not my voice or my face,
Yeah.
but it was sort of just sort of like brief space news from the week, sort of presenting the PowerPoint sort of presentation, and then I moved on to doing interviews.
Awesome. How do your parents feel about this? Because I'm assuming you're still in school, right?
Yeah.
So you're having to balance this and school. What's that like?
It's not as hard as you might think it is. It's sort of school comes first, obviously. If I've got an interview and a piece of schoolwork, I'll do the schoolwork first and then the interview. I've never sort of put that interview first, especially with schoolwork. But my parents they love it, sort of following along, and my mum was able to come to Florida with me. So, um this is sort of they can join in with the sort of things that I'm doing.
That's awesome. Well, it's great that you have the support, because I think that's really that's definitely necessary for anything that you're trying to do, and especially in something like this. So you've been able to cultivate some really great relationships. Does it ever kind of just hit you out of like nowhere, like, wow, I have a relationship with Jared or with these astronauts that I'm having the conversations with them? What's that like? What's that feeling like?
That's a good question. I don't think I really ever thought of it sort of like that, sort of as it's more sort of, wow, I'm able to have this opportunity to talk to them, and never I think it certainly hits me sort of mostly at the end of the interview, or when I first find out that I've got that interview. But it's really quite special that I've been able to do all that, and to have the sort of that close relationship with some truly amazing people. Yeah.
That's awesome. So what are some of the things that you want to work on, later on? I know you're still in school, so kind of can you walk us through, what are some of the projects that you want to take on later on? Are we going to see Felix in space at some point? Is that a goal of yours? Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah. So at the moment I'm at college, which is sort of, I think, sort of late high school equivalent for people in the US. And I'm doing so it's called a T level, and you basically choose a subject and you do just that subject and nothing else. So I'm doing a T level in media, broadcast, and production.
Mm.
So sort of mostly to do with that sort of creating videos and content. And also be doing some starting up some journalism courses soon, sort of to sort of enrich my knowledge in writing and sort of with scripts and articles, news articles. And that's what I want to go into, journalism, space journalism, obviously. Um, and on the point of going to space, if the option ever came up, I'd take it. But it's not, I don't think it's something that, I'm currently actively seeking out. But, in the future, you never know what might come up.
Yeah, absolutely. With all these advancements, and we just recently saw the Starship booster come back and make its landing, which was insane to see. I think that definitely opens up a lot of doors. Did you get a chance to see that live stream live, or did you see it after the fact?
Yeah, I was in Germany when it happened. I was there for an event called Space Creator Day, and
Oh, I
we
did see that. Yeah.
yeah, and we were in the airport on the way back, and I was in the security line, sort of just before they launched. They launched, I had to put my phone on the thing. I sort of missed the booster separation. They had to run the bag through again and all that stuff. But we saw, literally took my phone off the sort of the security belt, and sort of the catch was just about to happen. So sort of just caught it in the nick of time.
Wow, that's pretty cool, man. I'm glad you got a chance to see it. So t tell us about the event that you were a part of, because I did see a couple of posts that were made on Instagram and on X, and I don't think a lot of people are aware that those events take place. So they're great events. So can you tell us a little bit more about what was that like?
Yeah, so it's called Space Creator Day. I think it's their third one. I think they had one last year, definitely. Most notably, Tim Dodd was there, the everyday astronaut. He
Okay,
the
cool.
big part of the one last year. But it's Europe's biggest space creator event. So obviously, I'm from Europe, so thought I might take the chance, obviously, to go over and see it. And I was invited there to do a talk and a panel, like live interview. And I'll have a recording of that out soon. But yeah, it's truly amazing events, so many things going on that sort of people don't hear about that you can get involved with.
Did you get nervous at all?
Yeah, quite.
Yeah. Okay.
It was sort of this giant stage sort of in front of maybe 100, 150 people.
Wow.
But it gets better as you sort of 10 minutes in, it was a lot more relaxed, and I had some amazing people up there on stage with me. Adrian from NASA Spaceflight
Okay. Yeah.
was there as well. So sort of people I were familiar with,
That's
which
pretty
was
cool.
sort of a lot easier to be able to do that if I didn't know them.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I hate public speaking. I always feel like I'm getting eaten alive just standing there in front of everybody. So I'm glad that you did well with that. What is there any other events that you're thinking about participating in?
Um, that's a good question. I'm thinking of maybe going to the IAC conference next year in Milan, I think it is. I think they're doing
Okay.
it there again. I think that will be something really good to go and see, because I've seen lots of pictures of it. Because it was just, I think it was last week they had it this year. And last year Gwen Shotwell from SpaceX was there. So it's sort of quite a high profile event that I'd like to go and see.
Yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool for you to do. Like I can't wait to see the content if you do end up going. That'd be pretty cool. Is there anyone in particular that you would really like to get on your show?
Um, Gwen Shotwell. There you go. I said that one. She's sort of I wrote an article about her on Twitter the other day, but she's sort of quite a lot of, she's quite unrecognized by sort of people outside of the space community. When you look at SpaceX, you probably think of Elon Musk, but behind all that all of that, there's this incredibly amazing person who's doing so much for SpaceX, and she really does interviews. So I'd like to share her story.
I think that would be a wonderful interview because you're right. You know, a lot of people don't know that she plays such an important role at that company. And I believe she's been part of the company since they formed, correct? Or
Yeah, I think she was I think she was like the 10th employee quite early on, and she went to meet Elon Musk quite early on, talk about sort of business development. And she was offered the job, and she decided not to take it. And then I think it was about a month later, she just sort of came back and said, I'll take the job. So quite an amazing employee.
that's really interesting. Imagine how different things would have been if she would have just said no and
Yeah,
never
very different.
considered it. I seen that Tom Mueller, who was a really really important part of SpaceX, actually ended up going out there and creating Impulse Space.
Yeah.
They've done a lot of traction. What are your thoughts on that and some of the companies that have stamped away from SpaceX?
It's amazing. Like you said, Tom, he was he was the creator of the Merlin engine for Falcon 9, to sort of probably one of the most launched rocket engines ever, sort of now, with so many Falcon 9 flights. But sort of seeing companies sort of sprout off away from SpaceX is wonderful. It sort of just feeds back into that sort of SpaceX inspiring so many people, outside and inside, inspired people inside, and they've gone off and sort of taken that knowledge with them, and being able to create their own space companies. How amazing is that? It's great.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. There's definitely been an increase in the amount of startups that are doing everything from satellites to launch. So I think we're definitely living in a really good point in time where we're going to see a lot of technology developing and a lot of new opportunities that we have even no idea that exist. So it's going to be a fun thing to do, and to be able to see those stories go from scrappy startup to companies that are pumping out products just in and out constantly. Is
Yeah.
there is there any like missions that you're excited to see coming up, or any projects that are currently on the works that you're excited to see?
Um, One in particular, obviously Polaris program. They've got the next one sort of in their manifest is the second Polaris mission. Not much information out about that one, but when the time for that one to launch is, I'll be very excited. Sort of they'll be building on the Polaris Dawn mission. Excited to see what they'll do. Maybe they'll do another spacewalk, or I don't know, but I'm sure whatever they're thinking of will be amazing.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the spacewalk was really amazing to see. Um, I woke up super early to see that live stream. It was
Yeah,
it was great. What was that like for you seeing that happen?
yeah, it was great. We were still in Florida when it happened. So I woke up, I think it must have been about 4 a.m. Sort of set my alarm for 4 or 5. So wake up in my hotel room and put that on the TV, and that was amazing to see. Sort of someone I'd talked to just a few days earlier is now, you know, floating out in space, sort of on top of their capsule. And I had that feeling as well when they launched. I talked to those
Yeah.
people a few days ago, and now they're on that rocket going to space. It's crazy.
And see that's what I find interesting because you have these conversations and to have them then go up into space, knowing that you just spoke to that crew, and then seeing them take on such a crazy and very 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 dangerous thing, which is to go out there in the vacuum of space. It has to be a very particular feeling just knowing that you do have that connection with them. um
Yeah, it gives more of a sort of a personal feeling to the mission. Sort of, I was able to follow along with them, and now they're on that rocket, and it certainly makes you feel a lot more sort of nervous as well. Sort of when they did that EVA, I was quite nervous for them, and yeah, so it does sort of bring quite a big connection sort of with the crew and with their mission and what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. I do recall after we did the dinner, we sent out a thank you email, and Jared actually reached back out personally. He responded, and that again, it gave that personal touch. So leading up to the spacewalk, I wasn't actively thinking about the dangers of what could happen, but just again having that personal connection, like to a certain degree, really made it to where it was more like, okay, I need to make sure that I'm watching to know like everything's good. It's just
Yeah,
it's different. It's different.
yeah,
He
and
did
it's all
send out. Go ahead.
it's sort of while I was watching the EVA, sort of things link back to when I talked to them. So I talked to Jared about I think he described um sort of the activities that they'd be doing outside of the capsule, sort of like a dance, and he mentioned that in one of my interviews. And then when they start sort of moving outside the capsule, that sort of brings back sort of things we'd talked about. So that, quite a personal sort of link back.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I'm glad you had the opportunity to talk to him. I think that's really great. He did it. They ended up sending us the mission coins for Polaris.
Yes.
You still have
Yeah.
yours, right? If not, we can get
Yes,
you
I've got
one.
mine just over there on the side of my desk.
Awesome. So yeah, that was a nice touch. And then of course, they had the signed hats that we could raffle off for St. Jude. And I think it's one of those things where it's really easy for people to say that we're spending too much money in space. We should be doing it here on Earth. But I've noticed that everything that's been done so far with a lot of the SpaceX missions, if not majority of them, that especially with Jared's involvement, is to really use that as a channel to benefit causes like for St. Jude.
Yeah.
So it's really good to see that and to see that there's people who are willing to show that support.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, Inspiration 4 were raised, I think it was over $200 million for St. Jude, 100 million of that being Jared's own money. So, amazing sort of. And I sort of see articles, especially back in the Inspiration 4 days, why are you sending these four people, like four just civilians up into space? Don't you have better things to be thinking about? But they don't, they don't know about, that $200 million raised for St. Jude, how much money, that is and what it will go into.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's why it's important for content like the one that you're putting out to be available because it really gives the general public a better idea and a better understanding as to what exactly is going on, rather than it just being read off of an article with a really like weird headline or misleading headline. And I'm sure you've
Yeah.
seen a bunch of those coming out recently.
Yes, I saw one during the Polaris Dawn EVA, that BBC News had posted. I can't remember the exact headline, but it was sort of talking, I think it said the first non-professional astronauts, I think was the term that they used. Sort of which I disagreed with quite a lot. That's quite a wrong, an incorrect headline. So they've gone through sort of the same EVA training that any other astronaut would have gone through. Well, how does that make them non-professional? It's ridiculous.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. So where would you draw the line between a astronaut and a non-astronaut?
Um, Sort of I think the duration of training sort of goes into that a lot. Um, Sort of with Blue Origin, for example, um, I think it's less than a day or maybe a few days of training sort of goes into making them an astronaut. And that doesn't necessarily not make them an astronaut,
Mhm.
but it sort of contributes to sort of that discussion. Um, and yeah, and the definition of an astronaut is not someone who's been to space. It's someone who's gone through training to be able to go to space. So you've got to sort of dive deeper into the training that they've done to sort of if you're able to describe them as an astronaut.
I see. Do you think that there'll be a massive change, especially with the access to space opening up a lot more through private tourism, and then of course Starship now with their tests that are being successfully conducted. I think that there'll be a future where you'll see a lot more people getting the chance to go. So, do you think that there will be a massive change in the terms that are being used, or do you think it's still going to be considered astronaut training if you and I can just book a flight and go up there?
Yeah. So for example, they've talked a lot about sort of Starship point-to-point transportation. If you go on that, theoretically, obviously you'll be in space when you go on it, but that certainly does not make you an astronaut. I think sort of the terms do need to be sort of changed a bit with sort of those sort of flights into space.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so if we went on a point-to-point sort of Starship mission, we'd be in space, but I think you should sort of, it's a space tourist more than an astronaut. And that's what I love about sort of Polaris Dawn and Inspiration 4. they're not, sort of one day or sort of a few hours or a few minutes in space. They've gone through some proper astronaut training. They are astronauts. They've, gone through a lot to get to the point that they are and sort of be able to ready to launch.
I see. There's supposed to be a documentary coming out. I believe Jared had confirmed it, uh, or I might be mistaken. But that there was a documentary on their training leading up to Polaris. Um, do you
Yes,
know
I think
much about?
there'll be a documentary. I think Jared said that on Twitter. Um, with the same crew that they used for the Inspiration 4 documentary on Netflix. They just aren't sure, I think, sort of when it's coming out and what service it will be on.
I see. I think if I have to take a guess, they waited until Splashdown to add a bit more pieces of content to that. But just from what I was reading, some of their training, I believe, went from some really intense in the sense of them learning how to skydive on their first, being a solo skydiving session on their first try. It was something
Right.
along those lines. So again, I could be mistaken on it, but I don't remember if I heard it on a X Space or if it was an article. But they basically condensed like an entire week of skydiving training to like 1 or 2 days, which was insane.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
there's they definitely were doing a lot of preparation for stuff like that. And I think it's also important to realize that although there's physical training, there's also has to be a lot of mental training. You need to be in the right state of mind up there. Um, at the end of the day,
Yeah.
you are in a vacuum of space.
Yeah. And then you said sort of about that sort of mental training. Um, I think I had my interview with Scott Petit the other day, one of the pilot on
Mhm.
Polaris Dawn. He talked about a bit about sort of mental preparation. He's always doing sort of this training for Ironmans. Don't know how many he's done now, sort of lost count on that one. So many. And he does, a lot of mental training for those. And I think he was talking a bit about how that sort of training helps a lot with space because there is a lot of mental preparation and physical, like you said, sort of. I know they did that skydiving. I think they did some mountain climbing as well, but we'll find out more about that.
Yeah, it's gonna be really fun to see. So hopefully that documentary comes out soon. I've been wanting to see what kind of stuff they were working on. The fighter pilot training, that's always really exciting to see. We saw a glimpse of that with Inspiration 4 on that documentary. So I actually got a chance to see their some of their jets when we were down there at the Cape.
Oh wow.
One of our members, Code, from the Inspired
Yes, yeah.
4, he got a chance to fly on one of those, and I think it was a T-38. But we went to the airport and they flew in, and it was so cool to see. I saw Jared's call sign on the side of the jet, and it was just pretty. It was insane. It was cool. I
Yeah,
have
I've got sort of my wallpaper on my laptop is sort of like a sort of flicks through pictures from Polaris Dawn, quite a few fighter jet pictures on there as well. It's amazing.
Yeah, it's pretty cool, and the crew is great too. The Polaris Dawn crew. They and this goes back to what we talked about before about uh launch companies and space companies is that there's hundreds of people working in the background to make these things work. And while we were down there, we had conversations with the crew that was enabling the logistics and making sure that everything was being done correctly. So those people, they're great. And another thing that I've noticed too is that the space community is very it's not as big. It's not small. It's definitely not small, but it's not as big as I thought it was. And everybody seems to be willing to help each other out. So I
Yeah.
mean, what's been your experience with that?
Um, with the space community.
Yeah,
Yeah. This is quite an amazing group of people. And they're like you said, they're always willing to contribute. And if I'll post a video and I'll see, sometimes quite a lot of the time there'll be that sort of handful of people who are always sharing them, sort of always watching them, always commenting, which is just amazing. And there is sort of like quite a small community, but very always there to help, always there to give advice, to share things. And yeah, I wouldn't be where I am with my channel without them.
that's awesome. So tell us a little bit more about, what channels are you on? I know that you're on YouTube. Where else can users find you?
Yeah, so obviously YouTube, yes. Twitter, I post quite a lot on Twitter, sort of about space news, write articles which will go on there. I'm looking at starting sort of looking at setting up a website at the moment to post more of those articles. So keep an eye out for that, and sort of and Patreon as well. I post my early access videos on there.
Awesome. I'll make sure that we definitely put those links down in the bottom and link, so
Thank you.
they can check it out. What's been I'm curious to know what's been one of like the what's a lesson that stood out to you after you started doing, from all these interviews that you've done, what's something that has stuck with you? And if you don't mind sharing, whether that piece of advice or, constructive criticism, what was it? And who did it come from?
Yeah, I think it's people probably hear it a lot, but don't give up. There's no reason to give up a lot of the time. And I might post a video and it might get 5 views, and that's okay. Or I might post a video and it will get 5,000 views. And you shouldn't feel sort of sad if that video only got 5 views, because it's not only 5 views, that's 5 people. So imagine those 5 people in real life. And even if I post a video and it gets that 5 views, I've shared something with those 5 people, and that's a reason not to give up. People are sort of interested in learning more about space, and I'm there to share it with them, even if it's one person or 100,000 people.
That makes a lot of sense. I think that's a great way to look at it. I think especially now with social media, it's so easy for us to get lost in the like count and the engagement numbers and all that stuff, that we fail to realize that, like you said, 5 people is still 5 people, 20 people is still 20 people. Fill up a room with those people and it'll fill up pretty quick.
Yeah, I've seen sort of people as well in the past. They've sort of started a YouTube channel, posted something, and they might have only got 500 views. And then they sort of not posted again because it was sort of, only 500 people. But imagine that 500 people in a room. That is a lot of people. So there's no reason to give up, especially over sort of how many people are watching.
100%, 100%. Well, I want to thank you again, for hopping onto the into the podcast, and I want to thank you for the content and the education that you do. I think that's definitely helped me out a lot. I definitely watch some of your videos to learn more about what's going on, and I encourage everybody to go check it out too. Because it's important to know and to get educated, right? So that you can formulate your own opinions. But one thing that I do admire about you, and that I do respect a lot, is the transparency and the honesty. I feel like there's a lot of clickbait out there now,
Yeah.
especially in the space industry. So it can be very misleading sometimes when you see certain titles, and then it's a complete like 180 as to what they were talking about.
Yeah, I think there's no reason to. I think one of the things that I do with my interviews is it's all about that person, and I don't see my channel as being about myself, and that's quite important to me. That these videos are for other people; they're not for my. They might be for myself because I'm learning things from it, but they're for other people as well. And yeah, it's sort of I'm sharing what they've said. I'll ask them the questions, they'll answer, and then I'll post that, and that's quite valuable information sometimes.
That's awesome. Yeah, and that's you hit the nail on the head. So yeah, thank you for what you do and continue doing it. I'm excited to see what the future holds in store for you, and I think that you're definitely on the right path. So I hope we can take my 2-3 viewers to your channel.
Thank you very much. And yeah, thank you so much for the invite on here today. And don't give up. There's those 2-3 people, like you said, they're watching it, they're invested in what you're making. And there's billions of people on the planet who are sort of out there, and who will want to hear more about sort of stories that you're telling. And keep it up, and I can't wait to hear more of the podcasts you post in the future.
Thank you so much, Felix. Thank you, and I appreciate the kind words. So, well, with that, thank you once again, and for everybody here who came to the Zero Gravity podcast, thank you for watching. Make sure you drop your comments, that you like, that you subscribe. If you want to give us a dislike, give us a dislike. But go ahead and follow, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos. So, Felix, once again, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.